Hey book friends, welcome to the final installment of my romance project series. And so I will link episode 1 and episode 2 above. And so you can check out my in-depth thoughts as I read some of these books. But this is my current graphic for the project. I only have 4 books left to read, which is what we are going to be doing in this vlog. So let's just hop into it. I'll give you some final details and we'll read some books. So hi, my name is Angie. Welcome back to the channel. Like I said, this is my final video in my romance project series. And this is the video where I want to kind of unpack it all. I'll give you my favorites from the project. I'll talk about some of the things I've learned. So I'm going to save that towards the end. But I think I should just jump into the books. I have 4 tropes left. Small town, grumpy sunshine, accidental pregnancy, and friends with benefits. And I think these final tropes will just kind of round out this experiment. And so what I'm going to be reading, this book, I'm just drawn to it. I was going to read it for Brother's Best Friend, but instead I'm reading it for Friends with Benefits. And that's Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. I just want to know, what Colleen Hoover is all about. I'm also going to be reading Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. I'm reading this for Grumpy Sunshine, although it does have like Small Town also. So that I'm excited for. I am reading a fall book, even though I feel like maybe in the last episode I talked about the fact that I don't typically like holiday romances, but I want to know what the hype is. And this sounds like a really good book. And so I'm going to be reading If It Makes You Happy by Julie Olivia. I'm reading this for Small Town. This is like quintessential small town in the fall, Gilmore Girls, Coded, all the things. So that's my plan. And then I'm going to be reading Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. I'm really excited about this. This is a very hyped up book. When I was looking up recommendations for that trope, so many people like this book. So I'm really excited to get to it. I feel like I have some books more on the maybe cuter side and some books maybe more on the emotional side. So we'll see. Please give me any recommendations for these tropes or any other books down below because I'm making a big list. And also stick around for the end because we're going to talk through kind of final thoughts. So that's the plan for this video, but let's get to the first book. So of all the books I introed yesterday for this vlog, the one I was like most interested in picking up kind of right away was this one, and that is Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. The general synopsis for this book is that Winifred, our main character, ends up pregnant from a one-night stand. So she's at a Halloween party of her best friend. She's dressed up like a pirate. There's another pirate there, and they really just hit it off, and they find that they have like extreme chemistry. That's the general gist of it, until she finds out that she is actually pregnant. And she has to contact him, and the book starts from there, right? Now, in my very first romance video, I talked about some of my favorite books. One of those books was Ready or Not by Cara Bastone, which had a very similar kind of plot as this one. In that book, our main character ends up in a very similar situation, one night stand, all that stuff. But the story doesn't start with the one night stand, as where this one does. And there's a difference there because in that book, her friend helps her out a lot. And in this book, it is like her baby daddy, basically. So the man that was involved in the one night stand is involved in this book. So I guess it gives it a different flavor. But for this book, the spicy time was like right away. I really do prefer to like get to know our characters before we get anywhere close to that kind of stuff. But based on the premise of this type of book, that's hard. And I feel like the author has a choice whether they like refer back to it, like in memory, this is what happened that night, versus like, let's actually have some of those scenes in the book. And so that took me a little bit to get through, but really it didn't bug me too bad because the 2 main characters I really, really like. I feel like they're both open and honest characters. There's a lot of disability rep where she was born with a smaller hand, a deformed hand, and he has a prosthetic leg. Now we get into some of the details, especially for his backstory, but hers was more genetic and she's always had it. I feel like there's just beauty in the way that the 2 of them approach each other, honestly. And so I'm liking that. I like 170 pages in to the book because I made a big dent in it yesterday. I'm liking it. It's really entertaining so far. It's definitely going through all the feelings around pregnancy, which is partly why I liked Ready or Not as well, is because it's reminiscent of pregnancy, and I've been pregnant a number of times, and there's just some relatability to that for me. I definitely wanted to put this trope on my final vlog because I liked that book so much, and I wasn't sure if it was a one-off thing. Like if Ready or Not was just like the only accidental pregnancy book I would like. I'll keep reading and get back with you. I get it. I get why people love this book. Like I saw so many recommendations for this book. So I read this book for the accidental pregnancy trope. Do I like that trope? I think so. I think this might be a really niche trope for me. I feel like it has to happen within a friendship, which is what developed in this book. I feel like that was probably one of my favorite things, is that our main characters of Win and Bo really got to know each other. So maybe a little bit of miscommunication, but I think it was necessary miscommunication because it helped them have time to get to know each other, right? So I would say though, this book isn't necessarily about the pregnancy or fear of pregnancy or any of that kind of things. It was more about our main character kind of discovering the strength from within and valuing herself a little bit more than she was, say, at the beginning of the book when she felt a little bit more stuck. So like, I do love how throughout this book, both main characters were like thankful for this accidental pregnancy, for the fact that they were thrown together after just a one-night stand. Like they did not know each other and were able to build a beautiful friendship and then more, obviously, since it's a romance. Now, as for what I would give this book, like rating wise, I feel like it's more of a 4 for me. It's not a like slam dunk 5-star book. I feel like the main characters are very real to life. Honestly, like you could be friends with these people. And I loved that aspect of it. But I feel like for me, and this might just be a me thing, I found his character to be just a bit much, like a bit over the top. And I already know that that drives me a little bit nuts, like this like main male character who's just so very perfect. But I don't know if that's really what drove me nuts about this, because I wouldn't even say he was very perfect. I felt like he was just a little over the top. Like he was just a little too into her, not like real or selfish or any of those things where where I was expecting him to behave in certain ways, and he didn't. Like he just kind of kept with this, you're the most amazing person and I'm so very thankful I met you sort of idea. So anyway, I liked it. I really did. I flew through it. I enjoyed it. I wanted their story. Oh, that reminds me. I'm not sure if I like epilogues in romance books. So I feel like I've heard that before where people are like, I don't read the epilogues. I'm like, why not? I've always enjoyed epilogues. But now, since reading romance, I'm like, oh, I kind of get it. Like, I'm not sure if I need the 10 years down the road sort of timeline. That happened in a number of books that I've read for this project. It happened in Juniper Hill. It happened in Josh and Hazel, even though that was like a 5-star book for me. It got to the epilogue and I'm like, I didn't need it. And this one was almost even worse. Like where I'm reading it and I'm like, I didn't need that. I actually was very happy with the way the book ended. So I might just have a thing with like romance epilogues. Let me know if you're like that. But 4 stars. I'm moving on. I am moving on to a very popular book this fall, and I'm hesitant. I'm hesitant to pick up this book because of the fact that it is a holiday romance, that it is kind of a seasonal romance. That's this book. If It Makes You Happy by Julie Olivia. Now this has been very popular for a number of different reasons. I think it is mostly because of like the nostalgia vibes. Like it has 90s references and things like that. And since I grew up in the 90s, I think that'll be fun. I'm not really a pop culture-y kind of person, so if it doesn't have a ton of that, it won't bother me. I've heard it be a bit reminiscent of like Gilmore Girls and things like that. And so I'm using it for the small town trope. It could probably be also Grumpy Sunshine. I feel like those two are very commonly put together. It's about our main character who is, I believe, recently divorced or coming out of a really bad divorce. And then she, for some reason, goes back to her small town to help out her dad run a bed and breakfast or something to that notion because her mom just recently passed away or is about to pass away, something like that. And so she's coming back to help, even though she is not that type of a person. She's not that like hospitality, Enneagram 2 is kind of how I think about those kinds of people who just really want to like serve you and make sure your stay is very comfortable. It sounds like she's more of kind of like high-powered businesswoman, maybe. I'm not sure, but I feel like I get that gist from what I've heard people talk about. And then her next door neighbor then happens to be this man who is a baker, which sounds kind of fun, although that's sometimes giving too much cozy vibes. That's another thing that's making me a little hesitant, but I like the idea. Like it's described here, I love this. Small town golden boy, check. Single dad extraordinaire, check. So it has some single parent, which I liked that from Juniper Hill. And then hot baker forearms, I didn't notice them, I swear. Which just kind of makes me laugh. I think that sounds really funny. It's actually a very large book. It's almost 500 pages for a romance. So that's surprising. I could really like it. This is an example of me trying for some hype where I'm a little hesitant, but I'm really, really, really hopeful that I will like this. You guys, this book could not be more 90s coded. I feel like I saw a review that was saying like, there's not that many 90s references, and I disagree. I feel like there's so many. Like, granted, I think the person that was reviewing it was a little younger than I am, so I graduated high school in 2000. My teenage years were the 90s, and so like, I'm pretty much like the character in here, the older daughter, like she's like a 16-year-old or something like that. And so I am really enjoying that aspect of this book. Now I'm about 130 pages into it. I thought I would stop and give you an update because I had some thoughts. The first was I wasn't loving it. Too cutesy. It's so cutesy. Although I do love the 90s references, right? Cutesy's not my thing. Then something was said that implied a bit about Michelle's background, that had a little more depth, that had a little bit of more emotion, that explains a little bit about Michelle's personality. Like she's very standoffish, she's very cold, she's very like, I get things done. Like she's a very working woman, city girl sort of vibe, right? And she's not fitting in this small town, and she's running this bed and breakfast and she's terrible at it. Like she just doesn't have those cozy homey vibes, right? And so for me, like if it would have stayed there, I probably would have been just like DNF'd because I don't do cutesy. Like our main male character of Cliff is sweet, but he's also kind of funny, which I like the kind of funny aspect to him. Like I think he says some kind of off the wall things, but he is very like happy-go-lucky, and I'm not sure why. I just really like the broody male characters, but he's growing on me because he's like a dad. I love that aspect. I love the parent aspect to this, which I guess I did the single parent trope last video. Again, I'll link all those down below, but it is also very grumpy sunshine. I'm technically just reading it for small town, and it's very much giving me those. So those are my first impressions. I wasn't sold, but I might be. I had to hop on here really quick because I have an update for this book. I'm on page 313. There's so much yearning between these two characters. There's so much like almost moments, and then times when the characters are like pushing each other away, or in our case of our main character, right? She has a sister who's going to come take over the inn, and she's convinced herself that she can't be with Cliff, so she's going to try and set up her sister, which is just so terrible, right? It's so terrible, especially since there's just like so much cuteness and chemistry between these two. And so that was my update, is I just wanted to say I'm really liking the pacing. I'm okay with the length of the book, and I really want them to get together, and that's it. That's it. I'll finish the book and I'll give you my final thoughts. So I realized yesterday's clip was a little bit rushed. It was because I was kind of about to start homeschool, and then my kids were going bananas, and I'm not even sure if I was able to articulate my thoughts very well, but I wanted to update you because I finished it. Like it was so good and it was so fast, and I knew that I needed to make a clip because I wanted to finish the book. I was really hesitant at first because I was like, oh, I don't really like holiday romance books, right? Fall books, Christmas books. I feel like when I looked back through my Goodreads on the romance that I really didn't like, it usually was Christmas books, and then it usually made it so that I didn't pick up a romance for like another year or so because I was like, I don't like romance. That's not true. I liked this book, and it wasn't because the timeline was really long, which I have talked about in this series, is that I like the relationship to have time, right? It wasn't. There's like 3 months involved in this premise because Michelle moves to take over the inn, and she has only 3 months before her sister relieves her and she can go back to her life in the city, right? And so that brought the tension. Basically, it brought the idea that we can't be together. I'm leaving, you're leaving sort of idea. We're just going to be friends, because otherwise it disrupts both of our lives too much, this like attraction between the characters, right? Why I think this landed for me where others don't is probably a couple things, but one, I would not label this as cutesy, even though it feels cutesy. Like when you look at the cover, when you hear about the premise where she's taking over a bed and breakfast, he's a baker, like that screams cutesy to me, right? But the thing is, there's just more depth of emotion. There was more going on. There was more backstory and struggles for both these characters that made it so that they needed to heal a bit, or they needed the other person to see them so they could see themselves better. And I love that in romance. I really, really do. It's something that if I look back through this whole project that I have found really satisfying. Like I was thinking of the Jessica Joyce one that I loved at the beginning. The X-Files had that, where the male main character really was able to see her and she was able to heal, if you will. And so that comes out a lot in this book. So the last, like, whatever couple 150 pages probably that I had left to read, where they were able to see each other, even though there was still kind of this looming deadline, but it did result in the fact that there was no third act conflict. The conflict was kind of throughout. That reminds me of the last Abby Jimenez book as well, where it was the Say You'll Remember Me, where there wasn't a conflict other than the whole plot was kind of the conflict, if you will. So it didn't have to come to like this like miscommunication or misunderstanding and then be fixed. The setup of the story was the conflict. And I really realized that I'm liking that, because it allows for really healthy relationships. It allows for communication to happen, all the things that I really like in romance, especially as just an older individual, right? And so I'm trying to decide what to give this, because I finished it like early this morning. I could have finished it last night if I wanted to stay up late to read it, but I didn't. And so I would say it's probably a 4.5, because I did feel like the very first part was very cutesy and I almost DNF'd it. I almost was like, there's no way I'm going to like this. I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I gave it a chance. So I learned that it's more cutesy romances, less rom-coms that are my problem, which I can't remember if I was talking about this in this blog or the second. I think it was the second, because it's the one I read the Megan Quinn book for. So maybe rom-coms are okay, as long as they're not cutesy and they have more emotion. So, okay, I'm just repeating myself. I'm going to move on to my next book. So here's where the graphic sits. I'm 2 books down. I have 2 books to go, and they both feel kind of emotional. So I am going to read Ugly Love. I'm trying to decide if I want to read it next or if I want to save it for last. Colleen Hoover. You guys, like I picked up the Colleen Hoover book next, like I said. Ugly Love. That was my next choice. And it is for the friends with benefits trope. Now, it definitely falls into that. It also falls into the brother's best friend trope. So I had some options for this book, and I really wanted to pick it up because I really wanted to try out her writing. I've heard she's very emotional, very dramatic, I guess. Yes, I agree with that. Now, am I liking this book? I'm not sure, but quick synopsis. So this is about our 2 main characters of Tate and Miles. Now, Tate is 23 or something like that, and she just recently moved to San Francisco because she finished up nursing school and she's starting kind of at this hospital. She really wants to focus on her career sort of idea. She's living with her brother. Her brother's an airline pilot, so that's the general setup. But then Tate meets Miles, and Miles is a friend of her brother, Corbin's. It's interesting because half of this book is told from Miles' point of view, but 6 years in the past. It's told from kind of like what caused the trauma in this poor guy's life, because he's like 24 or something like that. He's not very old, and he is highly traumatized by something. And we're getting bits of that for sure. Actually, what's interesting is I prefer this book on audio because the chapters with Miles in the past are written very strange. Like, I'm not sure if I can focus on it, but it's not like poetry, but it's more like stream of consciousness. That's the word. And it's kind of like off-putting, a little off-putting for me, listening to him talk. But I was reading it really well there for a while. I'm at 162 pages. I'm like halfway. I like the chemistry between our 2 main characters. I think there's some funny banter, all of these things. Now, what's interesting is there's no real plot. There's no plot. There's no extra going on in this book other than their relationship. I guess the extra is his backstory. So that's the extra, right? But like nothing else is going on other than this arrangement that they have where they are friends with benefits with no expectations. Like he has some rules that are like, you can't ask about my past and don't expect a future or something to that notion. This dude's 24 or something to that notion. And she was like, well, of course, I'm busy and all this. Okay, I can get behind that, except that's actually what's not driving me nuts about this book. What is driving me a little nuts is our main character of Tate and her inner monologue. Like, she is not as like chill about this like casual setup they have going on at all. And she has not been from the beginning. And to me, that makes it for a hard story to read, because it's like, when's the shoe gonna drop, right? When is this all gonna catch up to her? When's the rug gonna be pulled out from her? She's gonna fall in love with him and he's gonna break her heart. So then I asked myself, do I want to read a train wreck? Like, do I want to? I don't know. I don't know. The problem with this, as opposed to other books I've DNF'd in this project, is I am actually enjoying the characters. It's just the anticipation of what's coming. I don't like. I do this in movies too. I don't like when I'm anxious about what's coming, like it's clear what's coming. So I don't know if I want to read that, to be honest. And it's so funny because I just came off of like the cutesiest of cutesy books that I didn't think I would like, but I really liked. And this is not. This is more emotional damage, hard hitting, and I thought I would like this more. If I were to predict at the beginning of this vlog, I thought this was going to be one of the ones I was going to love. And I'm not sure if I even want to finish the second half. I'm going to leave you guys here and I'm going to make a decision. I'll let you know if I want to finish reading this book or not. We're about to head to church, so I need to make this fairly quick, but I needed to get on here because I'm DNFing. And I think maybe you might have been able to guess that from my last clip. I like emotional books. I don't like books that are just ridiculously traumatic just to like crush me. And maybe my emotional is where like somebody's been hurt or they didn't have like a good family life and they need to learn how to like love themselves or see their value. That's my emotional. Like I got a little further in the Miles story and I'm just like, I can't read this anymore because it's just terrible. I just wasn't wanting to pick it up. I wasn't wanting to read it. Like I figured maybe they're gonna get together. It's a romance book, but I didn't want like between where I was at and the end of the book. I didn't want to read it, so I'm just not. I mean, every vlog so far I've had one DNF. And so then I was thinking, okay, friends to benefits. That's a very solid example of friends to benefits, I think in a very extreme way. Like very extreme, like very traumatic, right? Okay. I think I might still like the trope, as long as it's not so unhealthy. Like that was so unhealthy. Like I get it, it's a book and there's some redemption arcs that could happen, right? I just don't want it to go that far. So then I was looking at my shelves to see what I had, and I had a couple options, but this one appeals to me. It's The Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez. I feel like this definitely has that friends with benefits trope, but I think it's a secondary trope because I'm like 40 pages in, so I don't quite know what's going on, but I'm hoping Abby Jimenez will land a little bit better for me. All right, you guys, this book is very bingeable. It's very fun. I'm about halfway now. Page 156 of The Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez. It is really good. It does have some friends to benefits, especially because we're in the middle of the book and that's where the plot has gone. Because at the beginning, our main character, Kristen, was dating this military guy and he's about to come home and they're gonna live together and she's very anxious and all this stuff. But then Josh enters her life and Josh is gonna be the best man when she's gonna be the maid of honor at their best friend's wedding. Now he has just moved to town. He has recently broken up with his girlfriend and so he's kind of like writing off women until he meets her. And he's really intrigued by her, but yet she's a little standoffish because she has a boyfriend. She should be standoffish, but he is helping her like make these little dog stairs or something cute like that. She needed a carpenter for her business. So they're in each other's lives and they're forming a friendship, but they're attracted to each other. But on her end, she has a like long-term boyfriend. And so he's clearly off limits. So they're very friend zone, right? Until they're not. Now, what makes this story, I feel like, a little deeper and a little bit more interesting to me is the chronic health issues of our main character. She has like serious endometriosis. I don't know if they've actually used that word, but terrible monthly cycles, all of these things, like so much pain, so much problems that it has reached the point for her to consider a hysterectomy at the age of 24, which is awful, right? That's like the idea that she can never have kids. And it's something she's struggling with, but yet these health issues are debilitating for her. And early in their friendship, he reveals the fact that he's from a large family and he really wants kids. That's actually why he broke up with his past girlfriend and he wants lots of kids and he does not want to adopt. He wants to just have them the normal way, right? And so she knows that about him. And so she is trying to keep him at arm's length, but yet they are very compatible and so right for each other. And he doesn't understand why she's pushing back and she doesn't want to share. And honestly, I think what I'm liking about this, because this could feel like a miscommunication trope for sure, because they're not understanding each other. But I'm okay with it because it's not really. It's more that she doesn't want to share that vulnerable part of herself. She feels like she's broken and she can't give her significant other that key aspect, like children. She does not want somebody to pity her. She does not want all those things, right? And so it's like she's not sharing for reasons that are not miscommunication. And so for me, that matters in my romance reading. And I don't know where the emotions are going to lead us in this book, but I have read Abby Jimenez before. I know she tends to be more emotional and I tend to love it. And I'm so far really loving this. And I'm hoping I continue to love it, that it doesn't go too far into the misunderstanding each other direction. If it does, I feel like that will make me not like this book as much as some others, but so far so good. I was reading last night and I have some different thoughts than my last check-in, which was just yesterday. I don't think I got too much further, but this book is starting to rub me the wrong way. And I'm trying to like assess what it is. So a couple things. I think I was saying yesterday that there's some misunderstanding in this book. And I was a little more understanding because, hey, she's like struggling with some things and she doesn't want to be vulnerable. But at the same time, she's also having these like big feelings. Like there is some insta love in here that I'm not loving. Like I feel like she went from hot to cold. Like she had this other boyfriend and he's still a part of the story, which kind of complicated some things, which is fine. But at the same time, I'm confused by her character. I feel like I don't understand what she's doing. You know what it is? I think it's that moment when a character is like, I know what's best for everybody. Like, so this new guy, Josh, really wants kids. And so instead of sharing where she's at, she keeps this whole charade of like control. Like she's going to be the one that keeps it super casual. And if he can't keep it super casual, she's going to like dump him. But instead of like telling him why she thinks he can't be with her, she doesn't want him to resent her later in life if she lets him love her. It's complicated and messy. And yes, I feel for her in some ways, but I also feel like she's being controlling. And then the other thing that's bugging me is the insta love on both ends. And it's also funny because we've met the military boyfriend, and now that he's like a character on page, her initial time frame with Josh when she was still in this big long-term relationship kind of gives me a little bit of the ick. Like he lived with her for a while, like she was falling in love with him, she was comparing the two, and you're just, I'm not loving this book all of a sudden. And I am honestly surprised because Abby Jimenez, I've really, really liked her stuff in the past. I think this is her debut book, and I can see that if that's the case. But anyway, I'm gonna finish it. I just needed to hop on here because I realized like between yesterday and today, I'm a little less enthralled. Anyway, okay. I looked it up. This is her debut book, and I also finished it. Her writing has improved over time, where it's really emotional, but I feel like she was trying it from too many angles that I was just getting frustrated with it. Usually I'm like, yes, I love an emotional story. This, I was just kind of over it. By the time it got to some of the bigger emotional things that were happening in this book, it's not like Ugly Love. I felt like that was just too much. This though was kind of similar, and it also just didn't work for me. What's funny is like I was trying to investigate friends with benefits, and I think maybe I don't really like that trope because on the one hand with Ugly Love, it was kind of like you keep all attraction out of it. It was very much like just an arrangement, right? And this was like the opposite, where it was like they were like so in love with each other, but yet there was reasons they had to keep it friends with benefits. And so it was kind of like on opposite sides of it, and I didn't like either. I didn't like either side, but I also just, maybe it was just this book. It could have been. So I really did just finish it, and my gut instinct for rating on this book is probably a 3-star. For me, just solid 3-star is not a good rating. I have realized about myself that I kind of rate things either like 3, 4, or 5. Occasionally a 2, but very rarely. I will just usually DNF those books. And I wasn't going to DNF this because I did like our characters. I wanted to know where it was going. It just felt very choppy and it didn't make as much sense. And it felt like it wanted me to feel all these things, but I was just getting frustrated, if that makes sense. So probably a 3-star, maybe a 2.75, which I can't even imagine giving an Abby Jimenez book that low of a rating. Maybe this trope isn't for me, and that's okay. I guess that's the point. I'm going to introduce my final book of the whole project, and then we're going to conclude it after this book. But I want to read Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. Now, I don't know a ton about this other than the fact that our main male character is a bit of a recluse, and he also doesn't speak, I think. And then our female main character might be on the run, so there might be a little bit of a like suspense aspect to this book. It says she wants to lose herself in a small town of Maine, forget everything she left behind. It does sound like she has kind of something crazy that happened in her history. I wonder if that's going to come back. But she meets Archer Hale and her whole world tilts. He's isolated, it doesn't communicate. I don't know. It sounds kind of good. I've heard really good things. I heard it's also emotional, and now I'm feeling like a little gun shy of emotional books, to be honest. And I'm like, oh, I don't want it to be what the last couple books have been. So let's just wish me luck, and I will get started on this one. So I've gotten into this book a bit. You know, from everything I read about it and from all the different reviews I watched on this book, it's not what I expected. So it is about those two main characters of this girl named Bree, who basically runs away from her life, ends up in this small town in Maine, and she like rents a cabin, finds a job, and she just doesn't have a direction per se. She doesn't have a reason for being there. She does start to get to know some people. She runs into a man named Arthur, who is mute. We are reading from different timelines, with Arthur's being in the past, like when he was 7, some of the things that were happening to him and how it resulted in the man he is today, who is definitely a recluse, who doesn't understand society, who has isolated himself for reasons. Now Bree is intrigued by him and just keeps kind of coming around and wanting to be his friend and wearing him down. Okay, now I enjoyed that part. I enjoy Arthur. Really, I think it's the storyline that intrigues me about this man who is very inexperienced, who does not understand women. He does not understand society at large, but he has been hurt in the past and he has a lot of hang-ups and a lot of trauma, right? She comes like barreling into his life to help him heal some of that, which is beautiful and wonderful, and I'm liking that. I feel like I'm not loving her character. That's probably what's kind of keeping me from diving into this book or really wanting to pick it up at this point. I also might be a bit burnt out from the romance genre, to be honest, but I'm not jiving very much with Bree. Yes, she has this tragic backstory, really incident, I guess. She has this incident in her life that she's running from. And as the reader, I'm still not sure if that's going to come back and get her or not, but she feels very two-dimensional. Some of the stuff she says or thinks in her head is just like, nobody actually thinks or talks like that. It feels very kind of flat. And then the way she's approaching like people and relationships and like, oh, I should get back out there, and I don't know, there's something about her character that's driving me a little nuts, and his a little bit too. Feels not as in depth as I would imagine from like the setup, right? I feel like the setup has so much potential, and the follow through, or maybe it's just the writing style of this book, it's just not delivering for me. I'm about 166 pages in. Hopefully I'll just keep reading and find out what happens and really get hooked into the story. That's what I would prefer. We'll see what happens. You guys, I can't even believe I did not mention in the last clip that I was reading Archer's voice for Grumpy Sunshine. I think I'm just getting tired, but I was reading it for Grumpy Sunshine, even though I don't really feel like it's a good representation of Grumpy Sunshine. Maybe at the beginning, Archer was kind of grumpy and standoffish, and our main character of Bree, she's sunshine, but I think it's more like she's trying to find her sunshine again. So that's really how it is set up. Now I made it like a bit further, and I'm just don't want to read it. I really don't like the writing style. I don't love our main character of Bree. I just don't feel compelled to read it. I feel like Archer's the only part of the story I really like, and even his character could have more depth. I feel like it's a good concept. It just either was the wrong time for me to pick up this book, but I decided to DNF it. I just didn't want to read it. Now, every other time I have DNF'd a book in this project, I've picked up another book. And you guys, I do have some good Grumpy Sunshine type books on my shelves. Like, I have this one, and I've been wanting to try Tessa Bailey. So this is It Happened One Summer. I have When in Rome by Sarah Adams. I have this book, which is always recommended for Grumpy Sunshine. It's huge though. And it's The Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. So I have all these options, but I think I'm just gonna let it be. I'm going to complete the project, DNFing Archer's voice and moving on, because I have learned a lot from this project. And that's actually what I want to do next, is I want to unpack what I've learned from this project. What are my favorite tropes? What were my favorite books? What are some of the observations I've made about the romance genre? Now, I have been working on a list as we've been going through these different episodes. So first off, favorite tropes. So my graphic ended looking like this. It's all complete. I am very proud of myself. I do want to point out there are some check boxes in the bottom, which I set up at the very beginning. I explained in the first video, and I didn't really pull back into my discussions a lot, but I wanted to try out certain things like cowboy romances, billionaire romances, etc. And I was able to check those all off. I don't feel like it really impacted my observations too very much. I'm not drawn too far either way, if that makes sense. I'm not like, oh my gosh, I need to read every cowboy romance there is, or the opposite. Like, I can't stand cowboy romance. I think it just probably comes down to the situation and the story and the town and all the things. So that's fine. I checked those off. But you can see from the graphic that I had some books that I loved and I had some books that I didn't love. So I would say that the project or the experiment as a whole was really successful. My favorite tropes ended up being, which I really did not realize this going into the project, but they ended up being kind of a second chance romance, as well as friends to lovers were my favorite. And that childhood friends to lovers still is my favorite. So that hasn't changed with this latest installment. Those are still my top 2 favorite tropes. Although I realized as I was looking through this, I have some that are kind of secondary because they bring a lot of tension or stakes to the story. So things like forbidden romance, things like brother's best friend, or even fake dating brought more like tension to the story, which made me want to keep turning the pages, you know. There were other tropes that I think I just need to investigate a little bit more. So like small town and grumpy sunshine, I feel like I don't have a handle on whether I love that trope or not yet. And then I also want to look a little bit more into marriage of convenience. I did arranged marriage before I realized that arranged marriage is found more in the maybe fantasy romance, romantic sphere than it is in contemporary romance. I feel like it's called more of a marriage of convenience. And there are some books that I was recommended that sounds so good with that trope. And I think I just need to investigate that a little bit more. So I'm not like completely done, but some observations I found as I was reading is I really do like a length of relationship. I've said that a lot, so I won't hammer that point anymore. But I like when our characters have known each other for an extended period of time. Now that's not the only books I'll like, because I liked If It Makes You Happy, right? Which that was 3 months worth of a relationship. So I'm sure there's going to be some exceptions to that idea, but I really feel like I connect more with characters that have known each other longer. And so that's probably my biggest observation. I'd say some other things I've learned is I do like more of a healthy third act breakup conflict sort of situation, or when the plot itself is the conflict and they don't need a miscommunication in order to make it through the end of the book. So that I like better. And similarly speaking, I found that the spice level in my romance books, I have a bit of a bell curve. Like I could go for less spice, I can go for a little more spice. It just depends on the storyline and the healthiness of it all and how it applies to our characters. You can't really predict that going in. I realized that as I've been picking up books, but that's what I found I like better. I also really like quirky main characters. That's not a surprise to me. And this project only reinforced the fact that I like when our characters are just a little unique, and also when they've embraced their uniqueness. I really like that. I found that I don't love cutesy books. Like, I don't want to call them rom-coms because, again, I can't figure out what rom-com even means. And maybe you all can like explain it better in the comments, because I'll use that and then I think I'm just using it wrong. I think for me, I don't like contrived kind of plot lines that are a little ridiculous, that are in place to further this very unrealistic relationship or scenario or setup, whatever. I don't like that. So cutesy, rom-com-y, not necessarily my favorite. It has to have a little bit more emotion and depth. But what I've learned from this episode is not ridiculous emotion, not emotion for the emotion's sake, not like tragedy upon tragedy upon tragedy in order just like to smash and break your heart. Like I like emotion, but maybe not that much. I'm not quite sure where I land on that, but I learned that. I also in this episode learned epilogues. What? Like romance epilogues I don't love, especially that 10 years later epilogue. And I think it's from just the genre as a whole. Like it's designed to be happily ever after, which I am drawn to, right? Or I wouldn't have read all these romance books. So it's not necessarily that I don't like the happily ever after, I do, but I don't think I need that 10 years in the future to prove to me that they're truly happily ever after it. Like I'm usually just fine where it ends. So there's that. Yeah, I think that's about all I had for extra observations. I'm really glad I did this project. I ran this experiment for myself because now I think I can generally hit the mark on what I like in romances. I'm sure I'll have some one-offs that I won't like, but honestly, there were some just standout favorites from this whole series. Like I loved The X-Vows by Jessica Joyce. I loved Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. I loved this book that I just read, If It Makes You Happy by Julia Olivia. I really loved this Carly Fortune book, This Summer Will Be Different. And so now I found some favorite books, some favorite authors. I've honestly picked up a number of romance books because of reading some of these books and because of your guys' recommendations. So one of the next videos on this channel is going to be a romance book haul slash TBR, my new romance TBR. Because of this whole experiment, I have found books that I loved, and I know that I'm not going to be like only reading romance because it makes me a little tired, but I'm definitely going to pick up more romance in the future, and I'm excited about it. So you guys, this has been really, really fun, and so I hope you've enjoyed my journey through figuring out what I like in romance, and maybe that's helped you a bit too if this has been a genre that you've been curious about but you've had some duds. But anyway, if you have nothing you necessarily want to say, let's again do a heart emoji. Let's just finish out strong with heart emojis. But you guys, that's all I have, so give the video a thumbs up if you liked it and subscribe to the channel if you want to. All right, take care everyone. Bye.